Hello, good friends. Welcome to another In Other News. Staying with the summertime theme here, we're going to take another news story that's actually not buried behind the headlines in major news sources across the planet, but it actually is front and center. But we want to think about it at a deeper level. That's what we're about here. And where I want to go for today's talk is Brazil. There is a democratic bomb dropping in Brazil right now that I think is tied to other democratic protests that are happening all over the world. Let's thread these things together and start with our Brazilian bombshell to the south. I do have to give a special shout out for this podcast on the democracy bomb in Brazil to a bunch of Brazilian friends and former students who alerted me to this situation long before it even made the headlines here in the last few days. And that is Mariana, Umar, or is it Umar, and Geronimo, my Brazilian buddies down there. Thanks so much for tipping me off that this was a snowball rolling down a big hill in progress last week when I started watching this. So what am I talking about? For those who have no clue what's happening in Brazil, boom, 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 democratic bomb. That's what, baby. There are protests now happening in Brazil, and this is June 21st. And last night they had over 1 million Brazilian citizens take to the street to protest. Yes, unfortunately, some of the protests turned violent. Tear gas being shot off. Somebody died on one of the scenes, got hit by a car. The police are now battling the protesters, so it looks like, oh, chaos in Brazil. What's it all about? Well, this 1 million person march that happened last night is culminating. It may even get bigger tomorrow. It started over a week ago as a protest over bus fares. What? Why would people protest over rising bus fares? The bus fares across Brazil for public transportation, of which most people use, I know, strange concept, huh? Was going to rise like by, I don't know, a nickel, a dime, 30 cents, a buck. It doesn't even matter. Because these protests, which have now grown to millions of folks being involved, have nothing to do with bus fares. What? I just said it was, and now it's not. Yes, much like the protests going on in Turkey originated about some environmental movement saving some trees in a park that then spiraled into something much bigger. This bus fare protest in Brazil has now spiraled way out of control, has got nothing to do with the original protests fuse, all right? And we'll get to Turkey in just a minute. So people said, hey, this is unfair. There's this rising bus fare. Now, you might, here in the rich Western world, might say, why would anybody care about that? What's a few cents or a buck or whatever? Why would anybody get fired up about that? It's got nothing to do with the damn amount of money. It has everything to do with government accountability, and that's what these protests are really all about. They have now spiraled out of control. What I mean by this is people in Brazil are starting to wake up to the fact that, hey, our society's doing pretty good. And they are. Brazil's been booming economically. Middle class has been growing. More people are making more money. So again, why would they care about a bus fare? Because there's still millions and millions of people who are in the low class. And even those in the middle class, and maybe even some in the upper class, are starting to question their government in terms of what's it doing. And what I mean by that is, if you're going to start paying more taxes, be it in a bus fare or an income tax, you're going to expect a return on that investment. In other words, when you pay money to the government, you're doing that because you expect the government's going to do something for its people. And that's what Brazilians are pissed off about right now. Their taxes are increasing, their bus fares increasing, and they're not seeing any return. Public transportation, which most people rely on, sucks. Their infrastructure sucks. Their welfare benefits suck. And so people are saying, well, our society's supposedly getting richer and we're paying more money. Hey, government, what are you doing with this money? We demand more. That's what we call democracy in action, baby. The people saying, what is up, government? Do more. You're making more money in our rapidly evolving and getting richer society. Why aren't you doing more for us, the people. And there's a lot of people in Brazil. Latin America's most populous state, the superpower of South America. You know this stuff already. On top of this, what has added fuel to this fire is that, of course, you know, Brazil is getting ready to host the World Cup and then the Olympics. A great honor for Brazilian society, I suppose, certainly for the government who petitioned hard to get these things. And now the Brazilian government is spending millions, nay, probably billions, to build the required infrastructure for the soccer and for the Olympics. And again, people on the street are saying, WTF? All this money is being sunk into soccer stadiums, and you're making me pay more money to ride the bus? A bus which sucks, and infrastructure which sucks. By the way, crime is still really bad in Brazil, and people are tired of that too. And they're saying, what is up? You're spending money on soccer stadiums when we actually need more policemen on the streets to make us safe. I think it's a legitimate gripe. Now, am I going to diss the World Cup or the Brazilian government itself for trying to get the World Cup? No. All governments do that. And they would say, hey, this is going to have a big infusion of capital and investment into our country and provide billions of dollars maybe in tourism. So it's a safe a bet to try to get these events, and it's a prestigious thing. It rises Brazil's status in the world. No one's going to argue about that, I don't think. But again, back to what these people are pissed off about. The people on the streets are saying, that's fine, but our government's priorities are now way out of whack. We're spending millions of dollars on this stuff, and we are paying for soccer stadiums. And we don't feel safe on our streets and don't have good public transportation and good welfare benefits. What is the problem here? Part of the other problem here is endemic corruption in the Brazilian political system. And every government has corruption. Brazil's got corruption times 10. I don't know what the official status of corruption in Brazil is, but they're probably top 20 or 30 for most corrupt. And people in Brazil know this. The politicians from the very top all the way down or on the take are crooked. And people are getting tired of this. I think the average Brazilian politician is probably like a millionaire. And everybody's like, whoa, what's going on here? Now, our society's getting better, but why are all the people that make the rules and are raising the bus fares on us? They're all rich and get everything for free, and we don't. So, endemic corruption, I sense that their government is not providing enough bang for the buck that the taxpayers are paying, and maybe even just a general sense of driftlessness, that the Brazilian people are saying, our government's not doing its job, we want to hold it accountable. It's all about government accountability. That's, again, democracy. When the people are demanding that their government respond or react to their wants and needs, that's democracy. By the way, to finish up on just the Brazil part, this is not about Dilma Rousseff. President Dilma Rousseff of Brazil still has high approval ratings. People still like her. Probably most of the protesters like her. Probably most of the protesters voted for her. So do keep this in mind. This isn't an anti-president Dilma Rousseff protest. This is a anti-government corruption, anti-government negligence protest. So the Brazilian stuff is holding the entire government accountable for its actions or inaction. Holding the entire government accountable for its action. That is slightly, if not greatly different, than the Turkish protest. The protest going on in Turkey right now, which I again say, it's a manifestation of democracy in action. The Turkish protests are all about holding the current leader of the government accountable for his actions. And that's our main man, Recep Erdogan, Prime Minister Erdogan, who a lot of the protesters, if not all the protesters in Turkey, say, we don't like what that guy is doing. We don't like what that guy, the direction that guy is taking our government and our society. So you see the difference there? Still both manifestations of democratic action, but slightly different targets. No one's calling for Dilma Rousseff to be fired in Brazil. No one. They're saying, we want our whole government to do better, damn it. And we're going to keep getting mad and protest until you do. And you can actually slightly compare this to the greater Arab Spring protest and revolution. They're not about holding the government accountable. They're not about holding a single politician within the government accountable. The Arab Springs are all about trying to put a government into power that has accountability in any way, shape, or form. So most of those Arab peoples went to the streets to say, throw out the entire old system. We want a political system that has some semblance of accountability to the people. Again, another movement of democracy. And we can also compare this to protests that have been happening in Spain, Portugal, Greece. Those are all about government accountability too. They're more like the Turkish or the Brazilian ones. So people in Spain are saying, WTF, our unemployment rate's 40%. And we're all paying higher taxes and having to do this structural adjustments to pay back our bills. And it's destroying the people. Hey, government, you screwed up. And that's what people in Greece are saying too. Hey, government, you screwed up. You fix it. Why are you making the people suffer for it? So lots of protests happening all over the planet, except maybe here. Where are the people protesting in the United States? They're not. We're pretty apathetic as voters. We're pretty apathetic when it comes to protesting. Hell, the last series of protests that happened in this country were anti-Vietnam War protests back in the 70s and the kind of Cultural Revolution stuff. That's been about 40 years now. So we're pretty apathetic, but I think you are still seeing, even in apathetic America, you're starting to see a kind of more grassroots, let's get back to democracy, democratic protest. And some people are not going to like me to say this, but that's what the Tea Party is. You can like them, you can love them, you can think they're crazy, or all the above. But that's people who are saying, we don't like what our government's doing. You could also say the Occupy Wall Street thing was kind of a response to that too, although a weak one. It did kind of start a worldwide phenomena, I suppose, but they never really kind of focused or got their act together to say what they wanted or what they wanted changed. But again, my point here is that both the Tea Party and the Occupy Wall Street movement are both democratic manifestations, and that's what I want to close on. It sure looks like democracy is winning here in the 21st century. And I don't mean that governments are turning democratic. That's what happened mostly in the 20th century. Most governments on the planet are now something we would call democratic or newly democratic or established democratic. Or trying to be democratic, or pretending to be democratic in the case of the Democratic Republic of North Korea. All right? Everybody knows that democracy is the choice of government type everywhere in the world now. I don't care about that, because I want to quote, I believe it was Howard Zinn, who said, if you've never read Howard Zinn stuff, fantastico historian. And Howard Zinn said something to this effect, which is, democracy is not something that governments do. Democracy is what people do. Let me repeat that. Democracy is not something that governments do. Democracy is what people do. No government will be democratic. If given the choice, every politician would be crooked, they'd be on the take, and they would pass the laws that they want to benefit themselves. True democracies have people that hold their governments accountable through the ballot box or through grassroots protest, which is what you're seeing in this democratic bomb dropping in Brazil. You're seeing it in Turkey. You're seeing it in Arab Spring. You're seeing it even in small-scale Chinese protest against their government. They're starting to get fed up. So this thread of people are empowering themselves here in the 21st century, and maybe technology's got something to do with this. Maybe it's Twitter, maybe it's Facebook, I don't know, that's a different discussion, but people are becoming more empowered. In an era where we assume that Big Brother, the big government spying on us with drones now, hey, that's happening in America too, we actually are seeing, I think, another side of this no one's focusing on, which is more people have access to more information and are organizing themselves in more grassroots movements in country after country, and maybe finally even in America. And this is democracy in action. Thank you, Brazil, for pointing this out, for bringing this up. In a country that's doing well, they're still demanding more from their government. And guess what? That's what people in every democracy around the world should be doing. Let freedom ring. Freedom of the peoples, that is. But for now, we're out.